She didn't come back for him. She came to return a ledger. Carys Vale had rehearsed this moment for 9 months. Standing outside the iron gate of a Federal Hill compound, she had rehearsed it in a Baltimore motel with bad plumbing and in the back seat of 3 different Greyhound buses, and in a studio apartment in Pittsburgh that smelled like mold and the previous tenant's cigarettes. She knew exactly what she would say. She would hand it over, she would walk away, and she would not look at his face while she did it. She had not planned for the November cold to be this bitter. She had not planned for the coat to stop buttoning over her stomach 2 months ago. The guard at the gate was young. He stepped out of his booth with the particular posture of a man who expected to be obeyed, and then his eyes dropped to the visible swell of her abdomen beneath the open wool coat, and his posture underwent a swift, involuntary recalibration. "This is private property, ma'am." "I know what it is." Carys shifted the leather satchel on her shoulder. The ledger inside was heavy. She'd been carrying it so long it had started to feel like part of her body. "Tell Stroud that Carys Vale is at the gate. Tell him I have the book." The guard didn't move for a full 3 seconds. Then he turned away and pressed 2 fingers to his earpiece, speaking low and fast into the mic. She watched his shoulders tighten. She watched him glance back at her twice. She already knew what the name did to people inside this compound. She'd spent 3 years watching it happen. The gate opened without another word. The driveway was long and lined with bare oaks, their branches interlocked overhead like the ribs of something enormous and dead. Carys walked it slowly. Her hips ached. Her lower back had been a source of constant, grinding protest for the past 6 weeks, and every step on the uneven gravel reminded her of it. She pressed one hand to the underside of her stomach without thinking, the way she always did now, a reflex that had developed around month 4 and never left. 7 months, 31 weeks. The baby rode low today, a dense warm weight that kept her from standing fully upright. Lowe was waiting on the front steps. He was Stroud's operational director, a lean, precise man in his 40s who had never, in the 3 years Carys had worked inside this organization, shown her anything warmer than professional courtesy. He was not showing her anything warm now. He was showing her an expression she had never seen on his face before, which was something close to stricken. Carys. He said her name the way people say the name of someone they were told was dead. Low. She started up the steps. He didn't move to block her, which she took as a good sign. "Is he in?" "He's." Low stopped. His eyes had dropped to her midsection and stayed there. "When did how long?" "That's between me and him." She reached the top step. He was still half blocking the door without meaning to. "Move, please. I've been on a bus for 4 hours and I'm not here to have a conversation with you." He moved. He opened the door. The warmth of the interior hit her immediately, rich with the smell of wood smoke and something cooking in a distant kitchen, and underneath it all the particular smell of this house, old stone and leather and the faint trace of tobacco that lived in the walls, regardless of what anyone did about it. Carys had spent 3 years learning what this house smelled like. She had spent 9 months trying to forget it. Her stomach rolled. "He's in the library," Lowe said, his voice dropping to something careful and low. "Carys, he doesn't. I should tell him first." No, she was already walking. "I'll tell him myself." She knew the house the way she knew a set of figures she'd audited 100 times. Every turn was muscle memory. Down the main hall, past the antique maps framed in mahogany left at the second door, the library was a long room with floor-to-ceiling shelves, and a massive partner's desk positioned near the far window, positioned so that whoever sat behind it had a sight line to the grounds. Stroud was behind it. He was on the phone. His left hand was flat against the desk surface, and he was speaking in a low, precise tone that she recognized as the register he used when he was already done arguing and was simply issuing the final terms. He had reading glasses on. She had never seen him in reading glasses before she worked here, had not known he needed them. And there were papers spread across the desk that she recognized as supply chain manifests. He looked older than she remembered. Not much, but the lines around his mouth had deepened, and there was more grey at his temples than there had been in February. He did not look up when she came in. He said, without moving the phone from his ear, "Lo, I said no interruptions until 6. "Lo didn't interrupt you," Carys said. The phone went silent against his ear. His hand on the desk went very still. He said something brief into the receiver. She didn't catch the words, and lowered it. Then he looked up. Stroud had a face that was difficult to read on a good day. He'd spent decades making it that way. Right now it did something complicated and sequential, recognition, something that flickered too fast for her to name, and then a very deliberate and controlled stillness as his eyes moved from her face downward, took in the open coat, took in what the open coat could not cover, and returned to her face. He set the phone down on the desk. "Carys, I have the ledger." She unhooked the strap of the satchel from her shoulder and set the bag on the chair across from his desk. The red one, the November accounts from the East Side operation, the offshore routing numbers, the 3 years of cash movement you could never fully reconstruct. It's all there. I didn't copy it, I didn't scan it, I didn't give it to anyone. You can have it verified, flat. She had practiced flat. "I want a letter of clearance in return. Signed, dated, notarized. Documentation that I was a contracted accounting consultant with no operational knowledge or criminal liability. Something I can take to a bank, to a landlord, to anyone who might run my name and find it attached to yours." Stroud had not moved. He had not looked at the bag. "How far along?" he said. "That's not what we're here to discuss." "It is now." He stood. He did it slowly, the way a man stands when he's deciding how much force the room requires. He was tall. She had always understood intellectually that he was tall. But it was the kind of thing you forgot when you spent 9 months not being in the same room with him. "How far along, Carys?" 7 months, 31 weeks. And before you do the arithmetic out loud, yes, the timing is what you think it is. I'm not here about that. I'm here about the ledger and the letter, and then I'm leaving. You're not leaving. Stroud. You walked into my house at 31 weeks pregnant after 9 months of nothing. His voice had not risen. It was the particular quiet of something under enormous pressure. "You are not leaving until I understand what is happening." "I told you what's happening. A transaction. That's all this is." "Then explain to me why you ran." He came around the desk. Not fast. Nothing Stroud did was fast. He had the patience of someone who had learned that time was always on his side, but deliberate, closing the distance between them in a straight line. 9 months ago you were here. You were working in this office, in this house. You left without a word, without your final month's pay, without telling anyone. I know. She lifted her chin. She had practiced this too, not backing up, not showing the fatigue that had lived behind her sternum for 3/4 of a year. "I had a reason." "Tell me the reason." "It doesn't matter now." "It matters to me." He stopped 3 feet away. His eyes moved over her face with the same controlled precision he brought to everything, cataloguing, assessing. The glasses were still on. He looked, for one disorienting moment, like the version of him she had only seen in private, the one that surfaced late at night in this same library when the compound was quiet and the work was done, and they were just 2 people in a room who had run out of reasons to maintain professional distance. "You look like you haven't slept properly in months." "I'm fine." "You look like you've been living on not enough of everything." "Stroud." Her voice came out harder than she intended. "I didn't come here for your assessment of my health." "There is no arrangement." He reached past her and picked up the satchel. He didn't open it. He set it on the desk behind him without looking at it. "There's a ledger I already know you didn't use, and there's you standing in my library 7 months pregnant, and there's 9 months of questions I have been living with. We're going to address those before anything else happens." "Why do you know I didn't use it?" "Because you're not built for it." He said it simply, without contempt. "I spent 3 years watching how you work. You would rather go hungry than use something that doesn't belong to you as leverage. The fact that you kept it and came back to return it in person proves exactly that." Carys said nothing. She hated that he was right. "Why did you run?" he asked again, quieter this time. She looked at the window, at the grey November sky pressing against the glass, the bare oaks moving in the wind. "Someone showed me a document," she said finally. "A work order operational language, the kind your organization uses for removals. It had my name on it. It had a timeline. It was dated 4 days after you and I." She stopped. The silence was very loud. "You thought I ordered you killed," Stroud said. "I thought you decided I was a liability." She kept her voice steady. She'd had 9 months to make peace with the belief. She could state it plainly now. "I thought what happened between us made me a complication you needed to resolve. I thought the cleanest solution for you was—" Carys. His voice had gone somewhere she didn't recognize. Something without edges. "Where did you get the document?" "It was slipped under the door of my office the night I left." Who else knew about us? She had thought about this for 9 months. "Hartley, your logistics man. He walked in on us once in March. He was the one who gave me the document." Stroud's face went very still in a different way than before. The controlled, deliberate stillness fell away, and what replaced it was something older and colder. "Hartley has been dead since April," he said. "He made a play for operational control while I was dealing with a supply line crisis. He was removed." She stared at him. "He manufactured it," Stroud said. "He manufactured the order and used it to push you out. You were an accounting consultant with direct knowledge of the full financial architecture. You had my trust. To Hartley, that made you a threat to his position." He paused. "He also presumably hoped that your disappearance would read, from my end, as voluntary abandonment, that it would damage my judgment of my own decisions." Something crossed his face. It worked for a while. Carys's hands had gone cold. The satchel sat on the desk behind him. The ledger she had carried across 4 states and 9 months felt, suddenly, like an object from a different life. "I've been living in Pittsburgh," she said. It came out strange, a non sequitur, but she needed to say something concrete. "I had enough for 6 months of rent. I've been doing remote keeping for small businesses under a different name. I ran out of savings 8 weeks ago. The ledger was the only." She closed her eyes briefly. "I thought it was my only way out." "There is no clean way out of this," Stroud said. He moved closer. Not fast, not aggressive. Just closing the space with the same quiet inevitability as everything he did. "You are carrying my child in a city where people who want leverage over me are still breathing. You have been living on cash bookkeeping in a bad apartment for 9 months because you believed I wanted you dead. And you came back here alone in November to return a ledger." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the grey threading through his stubble, the faint scar along his left jaw that she knew the origin of and he'd never discussed. "Why come in person? Why not mail it through a proxy?" She didn't answer immediately. "Because I needed to know," she said finally. "I needed to see your face when I gave it back. I needed to know if what I believed was real or if I'd spent 9 months wrong." He reached up and removed his glasses. He folded them carefully and set them in his breast pocket. Then he placed both hands on her shoulders, not holding her in place, just contact, the deliberate pressure of someone grounding themselves. "It was wrong," he said, "every part of it." She had spent 9 months being certain. Certainty was easier. It was structured. It was survivable. This the alternative, the version where she had run from something that was not what she thought it was. This had a weight to it that she hadn't prepared for. The baby moved, a long, slow roll beneath her ribs, an elbow or a knee tracing a slow arc. Carys drew a breath. Stroud's eyes dropped to her midsection. He had not touched her there. He was waiting. She understood, with the particular clarity she'd always had when it came to reading him, that he was waiting for her to allow it. She took his right hand from her shoulder and placed it flat against her stomach. He did not move for several seconds. And then the baby shifted again, the same rolling movement pushing outward against his palm, and she watched something happen in Stroud's expression, that she had never seen in 3 years of working inside his orbit. Every layer he carried, the calculation, the patience, the controlled remove that kept a criminal organization functional, all of it dropped simultaneously, like a structure losing its load-bearing wall. What remained was just a man standing in his library at 2 in the afternoon, with his hand against the side of a life he hadn't known existed. "Come inside," he said. His voice had gone quiet in a different way than before. Not controlled quiet, just quiet. "You've been on a bus for 4 hours. You're going to sit down and eat something, and we're going to figure out the rest of this. I don't want to stay here." "I know you don't." He didn't move his hand. "You can tell me that again after you've had something to eat. You have been running for 9 months on a conclusion that wasn't true, and you're 31 weeks along, and it is November. And I am not sending you back out that door before we've spoken properly." She wanted to argue. She had architecture built specifically for this, 9 months of practiced self-sufficiency, but the baby moved again, and her lower back chose that exact moment to send a spike of pain down her left leg. And the truth was that she was exhausted in a way that went past tired into something structural, something that had been wearing her down from the inside since the first trimester. She sat down in the chair across from his desk. Stroud didn't speak. He went to the door and said something brief to Lowe, who had apparently been stationed just outside it. She heard the words warm and something real from the kitchen and the doctor, discreetly, within the hour. He came back and sat on the edge of the desk, rather than behind it, facing her. He looked at her the way she'd learned, meant he was being careful with something. "The Kovacs crew has been running surveillance on Federal Hill for the past 3 weeks, he said. "They've been looking for leverage, if they traced you here. A grey sedan followed my cab from the bus station. She had clocked it 6 blocks out, the particular loiter of a car that was going somewhere it already was, old habits. I thought I lost it." Stroud was already reaching for his phone. She watched him work. She had always known what he was. She'd spent 3 years tracking the financial architecture of it, every number a record of something she'd learned not to name directly. She had chosen this originally out of necessity. The job paid 4 times what a legitimate firm would have offered a 27-year-old with a state school degree and no connections. And she had debts that didn't care about her principles. She had not planned to stay as long as she did. She had not planned for any of what happened in the last year of it. She pressed her hand to her stomach again. The baby had gone still in the particular way of deep sleep, the interior calm she'd learned to read over 7 months. Lowe came back with tea and then food, something substantial from the kitchen, real food, the kind she'd been ration managing for months. She ate without pride about it. Outside, the November light was going flat and thin. She heard vehicles moving on the compound's grounds, the quiet logistics of a response she'd triggered simply by existing. She had come here for a ledger exchange and a letter. In and out, clean, transactional, back on a bus by 5. She looked at Stroud across the room, his head bent over the phone, the grey at his temples, catching the lamplight. She thought about 9 months of believing something that wasn't true, and what all those months had cost both of them, and how strange it was that the truth, once handed back, changed the weight of everything you'd been carrying without being the same thing as resolution. She didn't leave that night. She told herself it was practical. The roads, the surveillance on the compound, the doctor Stroud called, who arrived at 6 and confirmed the baby was healthy, well-positioned, and not in any immediate hurry to appear, which was the first genuinely good news she'd received in a very long time. She told herself all of that. The room Lowe put her in had a view of the back gardens, bare now, the beds stripped down for winter, but she could see the structure of what they'd be in April. She sat in the window seat for a long time after the house went quiet, her hand on her stomach, working through the math of a situation that had, in the space of 6 hours, become something she didn't have a ledger for. Stroud knocked at 11. She said, "Come in," and he came in, and he sat down in the chair near the window without being invited to, which she might have objected to, except that she was too tired for the objection. "I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight," he said. "Good, because I'm not deciding anything tonight. I'm asking you to stay until the baby comes. After that, whatever you want." She looked at him. He was in a different shirt, the jacket gone, and he looked tired in a way he probably wouldn't have shown anyone else in this house. "You're asking," she said. "I'm asking." She thought about Pittsburgh, the mold smell and the single-burner stove, and the clients who paid her $300 a month to keep their books and never asked her name. She thought about what it would cost to get from here to there, and what she would do when she arrived. "I'll think about it," she said. He nodded once and left. She turned back to the window. The compound was quiet beneath a low winter sky, security lights tracing the perimeter in slow arcs. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass and let out a long, slow breath. The baby stirred in response, small, definitive movement, as if registering an opinion. She already knew she wasn't going back to Pittsburgh. She knew it the same way she knew a set of figures that didn't balance. Not because someone told her, but because the math was already done and the answer was already there, waiting for her to stop arguing with it. She had come here to close an account, to draw a clean line under 9 months, and hand back what didn't belong to her, and walk away with documentation that said she was no one's problem. Instead, she had walked back into a set of books that were still open, still running, still recording a debt that had never been settled, not by distance, not by silence, not by the careful daily practice of pretending the numbers didn't add up the way they did. She stayed. Not because she had nowhere else to go. Not because he asked. Because 9 months of running from the wrong conclusion was enough, and the truth had a weight to it that made the distance between them feel, finally, like something that could be crossed. Outside, the November dark settled over the compound. Inside, for the first time in 31 weeks, the thing she had been carrying alone felt like it was almost, not quite yet, but almost, being carried by more than one person.